Hey everybody, welcome back to Brainiac Baseball's National League East season preview. Last week we covered the American League East and West in separate videos. You can find those in its own playlist on the Brainiac Baseball Card Breaks main page, as well as the 1981 and 1980 Detroit Tigers season replay if you want to go back and take a look at any of the games or the recaps from those two seasons. But today we're going to take a look here at the National League East. You see here on this title card, we have the standings where the St. Louis Cardinals ran away with the division. They finished at 63 and 47, and no other team in the East finished above 500. So not a great competition in that division. And I still think the Cardinals are the class of the division. They are welcoming back Dave Winfield. As you can see here, was the National League MVP. He led the National League with a .329 batting average, finished third with 15 home runs, and fourth with 68 RBI. So he was the National League MVP. He also won a Gold Glove to boot. So, he was easily the National League MVP. The Cy Young Award winner last year was Mario Soto of the Reds. He finished 13 and 4 with a .242 ERA, which was lowest in the National League, and he had 136 strikeouts. So he was the National League Cy Young Award winner, and the Rookie of the Year was the great Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn for the Padres, of course. He finished with a .289 batting average, 10 home runs, and 47 RBI. So a pretty solid season there for the rookie, Tony Gwynn. Of course, in real life, 1982, the season we're about to play, was his rookie year. And so he's made it to the major leagues, I guess, 1 year before he did in real life. Let's go ahead and get started here with St. Louis. We're going to take a look at their lineup first. As we mentioned, Dave Winfield was the MVP. Keith Hernandez, Gary Templeton, and Dave Winfield all won Gold Gloves in the 1981 season replay that we did. In addition to that, the catcher, Ted Simmons, Gary Templeton, Winfield, and lost to free agency Jerry Mumphrey were all All-Stars for the Cardinals in 1981. They gained two players. They gained Jim Gantner in a trade in the offseason with the Brew Crew. They traded him over here to St. Louis. So he's going to be their starting third baseman. He had a solid season for the Brewers. And the other player they gained is Steve Kemp, who Detroit, my team, traded to the Dodgers and in turn traded him to the Cardinals right after free agency had begun. So Kemp will be taking over for Jerry Mumphrey, who I mentioned was lost to free agency. And third base was previously occupied by a duo of Buddy Bell and Mike Cubbage. So I think they really did step it up as far as improvements at those two positions. Everybody else remains the same, including, as I mentioned, the three Gold Glove winners. Keith Hernandez, Dave Winfield, and Gary Templeton. Templeton finished second to Dave Winfield in batting average, and third in the National League was Ted Simmons. So they had 1, 2, 3 in batting average in the 1981 season replay. So they're stacked. They also lost Devon White, who was in single A. He was traded to the Dodgers in the Steve Kemp deal. They lost Tony Scott, who was a backup outfielder, fourth outfielder for them. And they lost a middle reliever, Buddy Schultz, who signed to my Detroit Tigers and is in AAA for us. So this is a solid team. They have a couple new players on their bench, Bill Lyons and Glenn Brummer. Otherwise, stacked all. They have George Hendrick, Tom Herr, All-Star, and someone who probably deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, Dale Murphy, on their bench. So they're deep. They have a great starting line. They are probably going to win the division again, considering that the other 5 teams in the division didn't even make it to 500. Let's take a look at their rotation. They bring everybody back from last season. John Fulgham was injured last year for 2 months, so he position. And Hector Eduardo, who won a Rookie of the Year last year, a career Mexican League player, is their number one starter. He only had an average season last year. And they finish up with Al Olmsted, Pete Vukovich, who in 1982 was the American League Cy Young Award winner, in a travesty. We're going to cover that during the season, how Pete Vukovich should not have won the Cy Young that year. And they're going to finish out their starting rotation with Bob Forsch, a very solid National League pitcher. Mark Littell returns as their closer, and as you can see here, their bullpen was pristine. I mean, any of these guys would be a closer on some other team. Their one sole lefty is Gibson Alba. And they have a great bench in AAA as well. I mean, they have John Stuper, who could step in and be in that starting rotation at any point during the season. They did re-sign Donnie Moore, who is in AAA. He's a long-time reliever. Pedro Borbon. They got Danny Cox coming. Luis De Leon made a few starts last year down the stretch. And Greg Matthews also made a couple starts with not too much success, 3-7 last year. So this is a solid team all around. There's no doubt that they're going to go back and probably win this division. They lost to Houston, who was eventually the World Series champion. We're going to cover Houston tomorrow when we do the National League West. So that's it for the Cardinals. Certainly a solid team. Their payroll is the highest in the National League at $9 million. And they have a couple contracts they're going to lose at the end of this season, Bob Horner being one of them, who is a third baseman. We could use a third baseman on the Tigers. I'm thinking about maybe making a trade for Horner. He has high payroll, so I'm not sure how I feel about that. But nonetheless, let's move on to the next team, which is Montreal. They finished second in the division. This team did nothing to improve. They lost a few major players, and that's because they finished negative in cash. And when you finish negative in cash, like the Brewers did in the American League, you are not allowed to sign free agents. So they could re-sign players who were going to arbitration and extend contracts to those players, but they could not sign any free agents, nor could they re-sign players who were going into free agency. So they lost Andre Dawson, who I signed for my Tigers. He's playing center field for us. The new center fielder is going to be a Roland Office, a poor rated center fielder. They lost Rodney Scott, who was their second baseman, kind of a backup infielder. They lost Omar Marino, also a center fielder. And they lost Warren Cromartie, a solid fourth outfielder, played right field last year for them. So they gained no one. They lost those four major contributors to the team. They have Dwight Evans on the bench. They got Gary Carter. How are these people not in the everyday lineup? John Tamargo is in there. The right fielder is Bob Pate. Who? I don't know. He batted .302 last year. And LaRue Washington had 30 bases. Their only all-star last year was Steve Ontiveros, who batted .206. Not a great switch hitting batting average, but he was their lone all-star. I'm sorry, not all-star. He won the Gold Glove at third base. That's my bad. He was a Gold Glove winner at third base, and their two all-stars were pitchers, Scott Sanderson and Steve Rogers. We're going to take a look at them momentarily. So I think it's safe to say that this team offensively took a step back, although they do have a deep bench. They have Ellis Spain on the bench as well. Larry Parrish in Double-A, they could bring him up. We got Rock Raines. Why is this guy not starting? He was a rookie during the 1982 season, so we may see him at some point take over left field from career pinch hitter Greg Gross. I think that would be an improvement. Of course, Tim Raines, tons of speed. Tim Wallach, got him coming up from Double A sometime soon. That's about all they have to offer in the minor leagues for batters. Let's take a look at the pitchers. As we mentioned, they had 2 All-Star representatives. They had Scott Sanderson and Steve Rogers. Pretty solid rotation. Charlie Lay was an All-Star in his time. David Palmer, pretty solid pitcher. Scott Sanderson, Bill Gullickson moved into the rotation. He might be their best pitcher by the end of the season with a max rating of 93. So we might see some improvement from Bill Gullickson over the duration of the season. Their bullpen, pretty solid. Bob James will be their closer this year. They got Elias Sosa, Dave Campbell. They got Bob Stanley, who we traded over there for Ramos. Bobby Ramos, our backup catcher. And so he pitched pretty poorly for them as well. We don't feel bad about losing him. Their AAA looks kind of pathetic. Maybe Kevin Mendon might make the team later in the season. Double A, they got Tim Burke. They got Joe Hesketh. They got some. Look at Jeff Parrott. That's your future closer right there. And some okay players in single A ball. So pitching staff is solid. It's their lineup, which really looks rough. And you're looking at another 500 season from them, and they're lucky to make that. That's going to be, their pitching staff will be responsible for them getting to the 500 mark again this season. So that's going to do it for the Expos. We're going to go and take a look at Pittsburgh. This team did nothing. They did not add anybody. They did not lose anybody. The good news is the trade they made last year from Detroit for Rick Peters paid off. He was awesome in center field. He was among the league leaders in stolen bases, and he won a Gold Glove in center field. So shame on me for trading away Rick Peters. Their lone all-star was Dan Warthen, a starting pitcher. We're going to take a look at him momentarily. They finished 4 games under 500, and their lineup, despite having a few home run hitters, not great. I mean, they had the great Dave Parker. They have Vance Law in there at shortstop, Mad Dog Bill Madlock at third base, Johnny Ray, a rookie in 1982. So was he Rookie of the Year? I can't remember the National League. So they have some decent possibilities. Their bench is poor. They're hanging on to Manny Sanguillen. Really low rating, but he's a backup catcher to Steve Nicosia. Yogi Berra's son, Dale Berra, still on the team. They got John Milner in AAA. Do they have anybody coming? They have Marvell Wynn, who was a pretty solid defensive outfielder, but really fourth outfielder at best. If Mike Devereaux, who got a cup of coffee last year and showed some promise. Let's take a look and stretch it out. They got Pat Borders. They got Mike Greenwell, underrated player for the Red Sox in his real-life career. And a few other names there you might recognize, like Randy Milligan, who was all bat, no field. So there's some hope there for the Pirates. Again, we're talking about another 500 team, unless one of these all-stars like Dave Parker or Mike, the Hit King, not the Hit King, the Hitman, Mike Easler, that was his nickname. Unless one of these guys steps up and leads the team, we're looking at another 500 season just based on their offense. Let's take a look at the pitching staff of the Pittsburgh Pirates. They got Bert B. home by Blyleven. I almost ruined that. Bert Blyleven, B. home Blyleven. So he was 9-8 last year as their ace of the staff. Dan Warthen, 13-11, not too bad. He was their all-star. Rick Roden, Pascual Perez, and Rick Jones all pitched over 100 innings as starters. They all come back. So that's a nice sign. Their closer, Rod Scurry, left-handed closer, not a big fan of those, but he had 11 saves last year. Bullpen is pretty solid. They got the Candyman, John Candelaria. He could step in and be a starter. Maybe should be, actually, on this team. Bullpen looks pretty good, though. Bob Long makes the team this year. Larry Anderson makes the bullpen out of spring training. A couple other players here who pitched a few innings last year. Any of those guys could really help out the bullpen. Don Robinson, was he a starter already? Yeah, he was a starter. And, wow, with the great ratings, he can't even make the team. That's disappointing. He should be on the team. Jose De Leon. We have Mike Bilecki coming up. And in single A ball, they've got nothing of note, really. So they have a couple solid minor leaguers there who could contribute this year. Really not a bad pitching staff, but really the offense will be the one that's holding them back. They'll be right there. Maybe finish as strong as number 2 in the East if they can put their offense together and scoot past Montreal. All right, that's going to do it for the Pirates. Let's move on to the Chicago Cubs, the Cubbies. This team, they did improve. I do like what they've done. We're taking a look at the Cubs here. Where are they at? There we go. My notes. So the Cubs made a couple big signings. They did sign first baseman of the Cleveland Indians, Andre Thornton. He was a former Cub. That's where he started his career. He had a mediocre year last year as a DH for the Indians, but he still got some pop. He's got a good eye. He walks a bit. So nice addition to the team. That does cost Bill Buckner the job. He falls all the way to Double-A. Batted .285 with 14 home runs. I'm not sure that's an improvement. He had 75 RBIs among the league leaders. So yeah, I don't know if that's an improvement or not. But he is a solid player, so we can say that much about him. They got Jeff Burrows for left field. They took him away from the Orioles. He replaces Scott Thompson. So I'm not sure that's, well, that is a big improvement, actually. Thompson doesn't have any power. Jeff Burrows, of course, once led the American League in home runs back in his days with the Rangers. And they got Dan Ford to play right field. He hits a few bombs last year. Their top home run hitter was Glenn Gulliver, who was a AAA player for my Tigers. I traded him over there. And they got the Stegosaurus, Dave Stegman, in center field. Pretty solid player, like a 362 on base average. For Stegman, we really could have used that last year. So a solid team. I like what they're doing. They made some big improvements. Their bench is good. They got Mike Vale, I should say, who batted .314 in limited duty. They got Scott Fletcher, who could be their everyday shortstop by the end of the season. On their bench, they got Lenny Randall, solid second base. Well, he played all positions in the infield, really. Who do they have? They have Kong. They have King Kong, Dave Kingman in Double-A, but his ratings are terrible. They have Wayne Gross, who, of course, we traded over there. Bill Buckner, if they need him. Carmelo Martinez coming up. He's in Double-A. He looks pretty solid. Glenn Davis, home run hitter for the Astros. Back in the day, they got Joe Carter. Look at that. They got some solid players coming. They got Terry Steinbach, future catcher for them. They got Matt Noakes, future catcher. Sam Horn, all bat for the Red Sox back in the day. So, yeah, then they actually have some really decent players. Mel Hall. So, yeah, the Cubbies, if they can, hold on to some of those minor league hitters, they could be a good, solid team in a couple of seasons. Of course, it's going to hinge on their pitching staff, which suffered a huge injury right at the end of the year. So they're losing Lynn McLaughlin from their starting rotation. He had a rotator cuff injury, and he's going to miss the entire 1982 season. So that leaves them short. But look at who they do have. They have Rocket Roger Clemens, only 19 years old, already a veteran of 27 starts. Improved his ERA in 7 games, started to a .360 ERA, 43 Ks and 55 innings pitched. Of course, he wasn't really playing in 1982. I think his first season was 85 in real life. So I guess I wouldn't expect too much from him statistically until he reaches his actual rookie year, and then maybe he'll take off. They have Mike Krukow. Steve Luber was one of the two All-Stars on this team for the Cubbies, the other being Glenn Gulliver, who we just saw. And then the rotation rounds out with a couple of stiffs, Mark Lemongello and Nino Espinoza, who moves into that number 5 spot because of the loss of Lynn McLaughlin. Their bullpen is awesome. Look at that. They have 4 closers. Suter, they got Lee Smith, Bill Caudell, who was their closer last season, and Guillermo, don't call me Willie Hernandez. So 4 excellent closers, closing options, I guess, in their bullpen with Craig Lefferts and Doug Capilla. So that bullpen is fantastic, and that could propel them into the top half of the division. As far as the AAA goes, they do have Dennis Lamp. I love Lamp. They have, who else do they have? Anybody? Nobody. Mike Christopher. Wow, yeah, they really are rough in the minor leagues. Mike Schooler was a closer for the Mariners in his career. Otherwise, they have nothing. So they lose another player, and they're going to be in a tough spot. Okay, that's going to do it for the Cubbies. Like their bullpen, and that's about all they have going for us. Maybe they'll have some pop in Wrigley Field with some of those big bats that they signed. Next up on the list is the New York Metropolitans. The Mets, they added a couple shortstops for depth. They added Craig Reynolds and LeMaster. What's his first name again? John LeMaster from the Giants. So no one that's going to help their everyday lineup, and they've got nothing. Lee Mazzilli had a career year with 17 home runs. Otherwise, they've got nothing. Look at this lineup. They got Wally Backman. He was a solid player for the Mets back in the day. Steve Henderson, he was a player you could count on. They have Mookie. Get Mookie into the lineup. Look at that, batting .307. He should be your everyday. Well, maybe not center field, but he must be able to play other positions in the outfield. No, not really. Below average in left and in right. What about Lee Mazzilli? Yeah, he can play anywhere. So he really should be maybe in left or right and get Mookie in the lineup. They got Kevin Seitzer, great hitting third baseman in his career. Maybe we'll make this lineup instead of Jose Moreno. The bench looks terrible. Former Detroit Tiger and Minnesota Twins manager Ron Gardenhire is on their bench. If you look at their minor league system, they got former Tiger Richie Hebner, batted .318 for them with that low rating last year. First base, wow, that's pretty good. Not bad. Not a bad average for somebody who didn't play every day. Who else do they have? Anybody else worth noting? Edgar Martinez, they have him in single A ball. They even called him up for a cup of coffee last year. So that's good, Hall of Famer. And they don't have anybody else. Luis Polonia was a pretty decent speedster, fourth outfielder. Nobody else that looks good in their minor league system. So yeah, this team, another poor offensive season from them, I would expect. Let's take a look at the pitching staff. Pretty solid rotation. I couldn't tell you much about Rick Ownby, but he has a 93 rating, and he has the ace spot. He went 6-12, matching up against other aces of other staffs. Mike Scott, great pitcher in his time, strikeout pitcher. He went 10-10 with that with 107 strikeouts. Craig Swan, he was their lone all-star last year. He went 13-5 with a 3.03 ERA. With the rotation rounds out with Mark Bombach and Walt Terrell. Terrell getting the number 5 spot. They did not lose anybody on their team, so this is the same bullpen for the most part, with Jesse Orozco taking over the closing duties from Jeff Reardon. Both solid closers in their time. They have Terry Leach, Greg Harris, the other Greg Harris. They have Juan Berenguer, a big part of the Tigers' 1984 World Series team of their bullpen, and he started a few games. Randy McGilberry, I don't know who that is. And then AAA, they've got some decent backups here. Neil Allen probably should be in that lineup somewhere in the rotation. Pat Zachary, Pete Falcone, Roy Lee Jackson. Those are solid names from that era. Ron Darling, looking really good. He should be in the lineup as well, in the rotation, I should say. They've got Tim Leary. They got Rick Aguilera coming up. He's a future closer, including Roger McDowell. He's great. Danny Plesac. Yeah, they have some people coming through this minor league system. Probably a couple years away. Maybe see a couple of those players get a cup of coffee at the end of the season. All in all, not a horrible pitching staff. Is it good enough to get to 500? Probably not. But they are a high payroll team. They have a lot of cash. They're going to make a lot of profit. So this is the team that could make some big trades and perhaps bolster their lineup. Okay, last team. We are going to Philadelphia, the worst team in baseball last year. They are going to have the number 1 overall draft pick this year, which could lead them to Barry Bonds. Brett Saberhagen is also in the amateur draft. Also, Rafael Palmeiro, if I recall, is a possibility. So, but Barry Bonds is going to be out there for the Phillies if they decide to make that decision. Looking at their lineup, oh man, they didn't gain anybody. They do have Kirby Puckett, who they got in a trade last year. He batted .311 with 8 home runs, and he wasn't even in the major leagues in real life yet. They got Julio Franco. Good things to come from him, I'm sure. Bob Dernier at third base. I don't remember him being a third baseman, but I guess he is in this game. Maybe that's what he came up as. Lonnie Smith. They have Ryan Sandberg. Let's take a look at Ryan Sandberg. He had 1 at bat last year. This is their everyday shortstop. They should put him in there right now. Doesn't look like they're ready to do that yet with Julio Franco there. So they got to find a way to work him in for sure. They got some veterans on the bench. They have some veterans in AAA with Bob Boone. Look at all the catchers. They have a ton of catchers. Double A, they've got nobody. And single A, they've got nobody. Wow, they have no one in their system. Darryl Boston was an acceptable outfielder. Otherwise, they've got nothing. Holy cow. So, yeah, they need Barry Bonds. That's who they should be drafting. Let's take a look at their pitching staff. This is bad. They have Larry Christensen as their number 1 starter, even though Steve Carlton was their lone all-star last year, going 12-6. Based on his ratings, he's in the number 5 spot, but he should be their ace. Probably technically is the ace. They got Doyle Alexander and Dick Ruthven. Scott Munninghoff, I don't even know who that is, but he went 6-13 for this terrible team. Roger Erickson also started a few games for them, going 5-12. He's in their long relief position. They don't have a closer. Someone named Dave Shipinoff is their projected closer. Their bullpen is just terrible. Warren Brewster has the lowest ERA. But other than that, nothing positive to say about the bullpen. They have Bob Walk at AAA. He could be a starter for them, although he pitched poorly last year. They got Tug McGraw. May as well move him in there. He's a veteran whose career is pretty much over. Hot sauce. They got Kevin Sauché. They got Dickie Knowles traded for himself. That's his claim to fame. Nobody in Double A. Mark Davis. He did win a Cy Young, actually. For the Padres, nobody else there. Single A ball. They got Kevin Gross, who was a good pitcher in his time. The other Maddox. They got Sid Fernandez. Okay, Sid Fernandez, a very good pitcher in the 80s for the Mets. So they have him to look forward to, and that's about it. This is definitely the worst team in the East. I don't see them improving at all. Barry Bonds, hopefully they'll draft him and give him a chance to develop, get him into the lineup maybe next year. That's it. That's all we have to say about the National League East. A pretty sad division. Tomorrow we're going to do the National League West with the World Series winning Houston Astros and a couple other really great teams. The Reds were awesome last year. The Dodgers are probably falling. The Padres and the Giants looked good last year. So that's what we have to look forward to tomorrow. Like and or subscribe. I project our season, the 1982 Detroit Tigers season replay, will start on Monday. Subscribe to the channel and you'll be notified every time we have a new game. So until tomorrow, everyone, have a great day.